Well, I'm at the farm in New York. Gonna go on a little hike here, get up over the hill, maybe go back in the woods. We'll see how I feel once I get up the hill. Beautiful day up here, just in my sweater, got my vest on, probably don't need it. It'll get a little windy up on top of the hill. So decided to bring you along. Let's get hopping up this hill. Well, I made it up to the top of the hill. And that's saying something. I'm really out of shape. I got to get back in shape. I'm going to try to start walking on a program that hopefully will get me so that I can walk a half a marathon in July. I've done that 3 different times, but haven't done it for about 2 or 3 years, and I'm quite a little bit overweight, so I've got to lose some pounds, and I got to, mainly the way I can do that is by walking a lot each week. So I'll probably be working about 4 or 5 days a week, walking a couple days 3 miles a day, a couple miles maybe just a mile, a couple days just a mile, and then probably on the weekends I'll start going up to like 3, 4, 5, 6 miles. So it's going to take me some time. I don't always have a lot of time, but as the spring approaches here, hopefully I'll have a little bit more time. I heard a bird of some kind up here, and I don't know what it was. And I haven't been able to find it yet. I haven't been able to see it, so I keep looking, and I didn't have the video on so I could even record it, but I'm hoping I can figure out what it is. It has a distinctive call. If I could hear the call, I may look on an ornithology site later today and just listen to some bird calls. But I am clueless about it. It almost sounds like a big bird, like a walking bird, like a pheasant or something like that, but it's not that. So we'll try to figure it out. So some of you who watch the channel know this is my father-in-law's farm, and I like to camp here and like to hike here when I get back. It has 165 acres, so there's plenty of room to walk around. This part here facing into the sun, so it's hard to see what my screen is pointing, but you can see behind me a lot of kind of scrub land. This is where he used to let his cattle out here and feed, and then what they'd do is they'd come up this hill, this path that I'm walking on right now basically, and they would come uphill and come get milked, and sometimes you had to come back and get a few of them because they were stubborn, but overall he had him pretty well trained. Also a lot of deer on this property. There have been some bear on this property. I don't have my bear spray today, which is really probably a little foolish, but I'm not planning on going down all the way into the woods or anything like that. And I still shout out a hey bear every once in a while. This is when they have cubs sometimes here in the spring, and they're out of their dens by now. Now the snow hasn't been gone too long up here. They had snow, quite a little bit of snow in the woods for quite a while here in the winter, and they had a lot of snow this winter. So the pack has just really gotten out. It's still pretty wet on the ground here, and they've had some rain too, but it's been pretty wet just from the snowpack. So yeah, So I'm walking a little bit today. I may go back down in the woods later, maybe on Sunday, although it's supposed to rain. I was thinking about camping tonight, but it's supposed to really pour rain tonight, and I didn't really want to come down and get all wet and then have to carry it back up the hill, especially with extra water. And so I'm just enjoying walking in it today. So beautiful day, probably about 55, maybe something like that. It's almost too hot to wear my hat. I may have to take that off. Getting kind of warm, and I'm going downhill right now. So anyways, we'll get back at you later. So this is the hill I have to come back up. This is why I don't necessarily want to go all the way down to the bottom of the hill. This is really a steep hill. And we don't, I mean, I could switch back and I could kind of walk back and forth and make it a little easier. But I'll probably just go straight up the lane. So I'll have to hoof, and I'll be catching a little bit of air as I go up, and probably catching a few stops as well. So one of the things that you find on a lot of farms around here are things like this. That's a gas well. When my wife and I were first married, I think it was back in, we were married in 76. I think it was the late 70s or early 80s. They drove for gas on my dad's property and found some. And this used to be a working well. And then, probably 20 years later, they came and basically capped it off. But there's residual gas that comes from that. And so my mom and dad-in-law had a line put into their house, and they've been using basically free gas all of that time. So that meant a real need in their life. Once in a while, the lines freeze up if it's really, really cold in the winter. So my mom can't really depend on that, but she has a pellet stove, and she also has electric space heater if she really needs it. But for the most part, this gas has been a really, godsend, and it's free, so can't say I blame them for using it. So, and there's quite a few farms with these on them. Some of them don't give off a good residual gas, but this one has. There's just enough that keeps flowing that, and they like to get that out of there so it doesn't corrode stuff. But basically, that's the well, and it's been there a lot of years, and it's helped out a lot. So, as you can see, we have a lot of crabapple trees around here. There's some right here in the corner, and as I walk up the hill, go through the lane here, there's quite a few crabapples up there too, not down on this end, but over there. And of course, in the fall especially, deer come up here and feed on those a lot, and so that helps keep the deer population here on our property instead of going other places. You can see for miles here. I think those farms in the distance there are probably about 3 or 4 miles over there. Doesn't seem quite that far, but we can see for a long ways. Way over on the peak there, you can see some buildings way up at the top. I don't know if I can zoom in on those or not. Let's see, where are they? I think you can just barely make them out there, yeah. And that probably is about 10 miles away. This is really great property. I think my father-in-law's property is about second highest property in all of the county here. So it's great. I was very fortunate to be dating somebody that dad had this beautiful land. Oh, there's a little bird there that looked like a bunting, I thought. Maybe an indigo bunting, I'm not sure. That's pretty cool. We do have a farm not too far away, just up the ways. You can see the silo there. And we have Amish at that farm right now. So I get my regular dosage and sights of buggies and horses up here. And they're really good people. At least the ones that live next to us are really nice. So I want to talk just briefly about trekking poles. I found When I first started backpacking, my knees really bothered me a lot. I was a catcher in baseball. Had to quit in college because my knees started having a lot of problems. I played football all my life too, and I didn't ever have to have surgery on my knee, but I did sprain them some, and so I started having some problems. And so I decided I was going to try some trekking poles, and boy, that has done wonders. First of all, it spreads your weight out, so instead of just being on two legs, it's now on your legs plus some of your arms and your shoulders. So it just spreads that weight out, which relieves your knees. Going uphill, I like it because it gives me an extra grip two places. So I'm a little more steady going uphill, even if it's muddy. I don't worry too much about slipping and falling because I've got, a good grip in four places instead of just two. And secondly, going downhill, it really helps take the shock off. Going downhill for me is always the hardest, especially when I'm backpacking. It's the hardest on my knees. But when I'm using trekking poles, it takes about probably 80% of the stress off of my knees, so they're really good. Now, there's a lot of debate about which ones you should use. If you look real close here, I have the Outdoor Products ones. These are the cheap ones at Walmart, and this is my first pair. I got these about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and I've used them on every trip since. Anytime I walk, even when I walk at home, I usually use them. And, just even when I walk trails and stuff. And I have had absolutely no problem with them. They're still holding, the locks work, they're good locks in place. And I don't have, some of them have cork handles, and those are kind of nice because they'll mold to your hand, but I have had no problem with these. If you're thinking about using trekking poles, maybe you haven't really, tried them yet, I would just recommend getting a cheap pair like this. I got a cheap pair and I never moved up. Okay, I've tried some other more expensive ones, and they supposedly are lighter and they're supposedly stronger. And I have friends who have gone through 3 or 4 pair of trekking poles and had them break on them, and they've got free ones because they bought them from reputable companies, so they got them replaced free. But who cares if it's replaced free? If you're out on a hike and something breaks, now you got to go without it. And so far I have had no issues with these, even though they're slightly heavier. I don't notice it, and I would really highly recommend them. Okay, well, made it back to the house, so walked probably 1.5 miles, something like that, but a lot of it was uphill. Uphill on one way and then downhill the other side, and then back up that hill and downhill this side. So got myself a pretty good workout for today, and we'll try to do that each day I'm up here. And so I love being out in the country. I'm using my Galaxy earbuds today, so I'm hoping that the microphone is a little better and maybe not quite so much wind, and hopefully it's been working. Otherwise this is going to be a long trip for nothing. So all right, so I wanted to talk about my Skechers half boots here that I got. I've had really good luck with these. I had another pair and I put about 3 years on them, and not terribly many hikes, not a lot of mileage, but they held up over 3 years in a lot of wet weather and muddy weather and things like that. So I got these again. If you look on the bottom, they have some really nice lug patterns on the bottom, which really does help with traction. There are a lot of boots out there that I don't really like very well just because they're kind of slippery. They just don't grab stuff very well, and I found that these Skechers do a really good job. The other thing I want to point out is that these particular Skechers have a really nice wide base. What I mean by that is when you look at them from the top, if I can get it to look quite right here, if you look at these from the top, you can actually see from the top, you can actually see that the base comes out around the shoe. I've had some shoes where this part right here actually comes out over the base, that the base of the shoe is underneath the edge of this or right even with it. And when that happens, then I don't, for me, the shoe is not as stable. Because these are out a little bit from the base, the base is wider than the top of the shoe, it doesn't turn over as easily. Now, that doesn't mean I can't turn my ankle over. I mean, certainly you can if you push it far enough, but it doesn't tend to do that near as much as some shoes. And some shoes are really expensive, and yet they're like that. So that's a really good thing about these particular shoes that you might want to try. As you can see, these boots are waterproof. That means water can't get in, but that also means water can't get out. So your feet are going to get a little sweaty in these. I found that these breathe a little bit better than some shoes. My feet don't get quite as sweaty in these, but you know, waterproof. When it says waterproof, and it means water can't get in, then water can't get out too. And so you're going to have some sweat with these. Now, I usually use a 2 sock system whenever I hike or anything. I have some silk socks on the inside, a real thin pair, and then I wear just a regular hiking sock, usually a merino wool sock of some type. And that seems to work really good for me, and I haven't gotten a lot of hot spots and a lot of blisters using these shoes. I also, my feet are wide, so this is a wide shoe, but one of the things that I try to make sure, I always try to make sure that the shoe is got a little bit of room on the ends. Okay, I don't want my toes pushing up against the end of the shoe or the boot, especially if I am hiking a lot of downhill. It's pretty easy for me to get blisters, and I can't feel them because of neuropathy in my feet. I'm a diabetic, and I really have a hard time. I just don't feel my feet, and so it's easy for me to get blisters. So far, these have done really good, and I really haven't had a big issue. Now, I don't hike a lot of miles, and if I hike 8 or 10 miles, you know, I'm going to get some hot spots and blisters. One thing that you can do is, like, if you're going to hike 10 miles or so a day, you know, after about a half a day or 5 miles in, you know, take your socks off and put a new pair of, at least if you're going with 2 pair, put a new pair of socks on the inside so it won't be so sweaty, and that'll help as well. Notice these also have the wraparound laces here. I never lace my shoe up any more than this one right here. I never do the top one. For me, it just constricts and it doesn't let my ankle move forward as much, and so I only go to that second one. And of course, finally, the thing that I really like about my Skechers is they're fairly reasonable as far as the cost. Now, if you look on Amazon or something and you order these online, they would probably cost you $85, $95, and some places you might see them for $100 or so. But I haven't paid that kind of money for any of my Skechers ever. In the Columbus area, Myers always carries Skechers, and so I've gotten mine always at Myers, and I just watch for the sales, and I think most of the time I've only had to pay between $55 and $70 for a brand new pair. I just wait until they go on sale. And so you can get a pretty reasonable cost here. Like I said, I've had, this is my second pair. My first pair lasted about 3 years and literally, you know, just held up very good in extremely muddy and wet terrain and stuff. And I really didn't have hardly any issues with threads and fraying and all that kind of stuff. So I you know, for me, it's been a really good match, and so far these are doing well so far. So one of my favorite backpackers and a good friend of mine is Jason Wish. And as many of you know, he's also a farmer, and so he puts some farm stuff out. Now, I'm not a farmer, but my father-in-law was, and you know, we still come up to the farm, and my nieces and nephews do some farming as well. So now this isn't really a farm thing. They got a 4-wheeler here, an ATV, and they've actually got a couple of them, and we take those back in the woods sometimes. I just got a hot tent, and so I'm looking forward to next year driving one of these back when it gets some snow on the ground, and that way I don't have to carry a big heavy tent, and I don't have to carry a big heavy or a stove or wood, but I'm going to do some hot tenting back in the woods. This is an old Blackhawk tractor. This is kind of an antique that my sister-in-law had redone for my dad. He had it, and it was kind of broken down. It was running, but just barely. But they went through and fixed it all and redid it all, and it's a beautiful tractor, and it's worth quite a little bit of money. So yeah. So you can see some other farm stuff around here. There's an old corn planter back there in the back, and there's an old plow. So yeah, this is, probably not too many of you probably recognize stuff like this. You probably didn't grow up with it, but I know Jason will recognize a bunch of that stuff. So I thought I'd come down and show you a few more pictures, see if some of you could figure out what some of these farm implements are for. This is not a working dairy farm anymore, but it was, and some of this equipment is still used on some farms around here. People rent it out. So yeah, what do you think? What was this machine used for? Here's what it looks like on the other side. There's a big old wheel right there, kind of a thing, and there's some tines. So what do you think? So here's another machine, a little bit different. It actually would come down, this arm would go down and that left arm would go down. And notice it's got these little spiral things on them. Looks like little tines or teeth. And of course, they would spin around. I don't know which direction here. Oh yeah, there we go. So they would go like that. So gee, what's that for? Okay. Yeah. All you city slickers can guess away. Probably most of you can figure this one out though. A lot of lawn companies still use those, so. But we don't carry lawnmowers around in the country with these things. We do other stuff with them. But your basic trailer. Yep. All right, so have fun with that. So it's been a really nice, relaxing day here at the farm. It's been a beautiful weather. It's right around 60 and just cool enough so you need a sweater, but just nice enough that I've basically sat out here on the porch for the last 2 hours and just kind of kicked back and relaxed and vegged out a little bit. Last weekend, so those of you that saw my video from last weekend, I went camping and I was really kind of stressed and I just needed to get away, and that was really helpful. And now I'm on spring break, and so that's going to be helpful too. And I decided not to go back in the woods and camp tonight just because it's supposed to rain later tonight. And actually that was a pretty good decision because we needed to bring a bunch of stuff up here to the farm, so I'm not sure I could have got my backpack in the car anyways. But I'm just enjoying it. Gonna put together a list of some of my backpackers that I like, my YouTube backpacking friends that I really like to listen to and learn from. We're gonna put a short video there together so I can hopefully share some really good people with you. I'm not, an expert backpacker, but I listen to a lot of them, and so we'll try to give you some information about that this weekend. And hopefully when I get back down home this next week, I've got a bunch of stuff we got to do. We're getting our house, getting a flooring put in and stuff, so I'm going to have to do some work getting the house ready for that. But I hope to do, I got a new titanium hot tent stove, and so I hope to break that in the chimney in and do a little work on that. So when we do that, we'll make sure we publish that as well. All right. Well, I'm going to head in and grab some chow, and maybe I'll get on later tonight.